welcome back to Uscape Adventures. You're here today because you've either chosen Utah for a vacation destination, you live there, or by chance a third cousin, 4 times removed, is getting married and your parents said, we're a close family, so you're going. No matter why you're in Utah, I'm here to help you find something to do, whether it be fun and exciting, relaxing, or just a way to take up your time. Salt Lake City was founded on July 24th, 1847 by pioneers from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, more commonly known as Mormons. The city used to be called Great Salt Lake City, but the Great was dropped in 1868. Utah is known as the Beehive State because beehives are synonymous with industry and perseverance, values which were praised by Utah's founders. Salt Lake City still somewhat struggles with its identity, trying to strike a balance between capital of a major religion and a modern secular metropolis. Now, I gotta tell you, craft beers were becoming a thing in Salt Lake back in the 90s when I moved away. Now, 2 decades later, there are 15 different craft breweries in the Salt Lake metropolitan area, at least when I did the research for the video. Some of them are Uinta, Salt Flats, Grid City Beer Works, Bonneville, Red Rock, and Wasatch Brewery. Some of the clever names of the beers pay homage to the area and its history with things like 801 Pilsner, Latter Day Stout, Escape to Colorado, Snowbank, and Polygamy Porter. I kind of laugh at the irony of Escape to Colorado because when I left Utah, that's where I went for my first adventure, living in another state. Some of the great things about growing up in the Salt Lake metro area were the plethora of things to do and see. As a kid, I remember sledding at Sugar House Park, near the site of the old Utah State Prison, going to the local community pools, riding our bikes for hours on end all over the area, exploring undeveloped land, playing in the local creeks and ponds, going to shows and events at the old Salt Palace, and places to eat like Lamb's Cafe, Piccadilly, Crown Burger, Cafe Pierpont, and The Other Place. Yes, that's really the name of the restaurant, The Other Place. Some of those places are still there, and some are sadly long gone. Alright, on to, the things. Number 1, Timpanogos Cave. Timpanogos Cave is open seasonally, typically open from mid-May to September. It is approximately 40 miles from Salt Lake City, but well worth the side trip. Tickets are sold in advance, and it's very popular, so if you want to go, buy them early. Take note, there's a 1.5 mile hike to the entrance of the cave, and it's quite the hike. It's a paved walkway, but it's very steep going up the switchbacks. On your way up, you'll cover over 1,000 foot elevation gain. Once at the top, you'll meet the ranger that will be your guide. Inside, you will learn about the formations you'll see. You'll learn about cave exploration and preservation. Keep in mind, you'll be inside the caves for approximately 45 minutes to an hour, and the temperatures hover between 45 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit inside. So if you get cold easily, take a light jacket or a hoodie with you. The site was dedicated as a national monument on October 14, 1922. Originally developed by the U.S. Forest Service, management was eventually taken over by the National Park Service in 1933. Number 2, Gilgal Gardens. Gilgal Gardens was the creation of Thomas B. Child Jr. Child was a successful masonry contractor, community leader, and leader in his church. The project was started when he was 57 years old and consumed the majority of his time and money. Child traveled much of the state searching for just the right materials. I take that to mean boulders and other large stones. He often needed to hire large trucks and moving equipment to get the job done. He commissioned 12 sculptures to be done between 1947 and 1963, not to mention over 70 other pieces of stone artwork with literary text, poems, and scriptures on them as well. Gilgal Gardens is the only visionary art environment in Utah. Child's goal was to get visitors to ponder the unsolved mysteries of life. He didn't say you had to agree with him, he just wanted to raise your curiosities. Best of all, he built this in his backyard, but today anyone can visit the garden. It's tucked away in a quiet neighborhood near 750 East and 500 South in Salt Lake City. 3. Golden Spike. Golden Spike National Historic Park is another must-see that is run and cared for by the National Park Service. I remember going here as a kid to watch a reenactment of the 2 locomotives coming together to join the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroad Company's routes, thus creating the Transcontinental Railroad. On May 10, 1869. In 1862, the Pacific Railroad Act started this 7-year-long race to connect the 2 companies, one building east from Sacramento, California, and the other headed west from Omaha, Nebraska, eventually meeting at Promontory Point, Utah. Now there is a fee to visit, but it's relatively inexpensive by the carload. They do a daily reenactment in the summers where you can watch the replicas of the 2 steam engines, the Jupiter and the number 119, meet again. to connect the east and west coast together. There are 2 driving trails you can follow for some extra sightseeing while you're there, and 1 hiking trail. This will take you over some old railroad beds so you can see how they were built using not much more than gunpowder, human strength, and perseverance. Number 4, Red Butte Gardens. With 22 acres of display gardens and 100 acres in total, Red Butte Gardens is the largest botanical garden in the Intermountain West. It's tucked neatly into the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains, just east of Salt Lake City. It's easy to spend an afternoon here, enjoying all there is to see and do. There are 4 themed gardens on site. There's a children's garden with a grapevine-covered tunnel. That sounds awesome. Bright colored flowers and a splash pad. Okay, I'm into the splash pad too. A fragrance garden with wildflowers, fountains, bridges. That's a place where you might encounter some recognizable scents such as lavender and sage. The medicinal garden has yearly themes like mental wellness, forest flora, and even cancer-fighting flora. Now, if you prefer something that takes less water, because you kill plants like my wife and I do, then their water conservation garden might be for you. It's full of plants that thrive in dry climates and are all native to Utah, actually. There's also a concert venue on site, and during the warmer months, starting in May, you can attend some outdoor concerts as well if you'd like. Number 5, Cathedral of the Madeleine. Cathedral of the Madeleine was constructed between 1900 and 1909 at a cost of $344,000. Now that's just under $10 million in today's money. I'm thinking they got a pretty sweet deal on that, since I don't think there's any way to build that today for anywhere near $10 million. They did a major renovation and restoration between 1991 and 1993. That cost them just under $10 million at 9.7. I was recently in Salt Lake, so I decided to stop by there with my daughter. Even though I grew up in Utah, I had no idea this place existed, or some of the others on this list, to be quite honest with you. Pulling up to the building, it is simply gorgeous. Beautiful Roman-style exterior made of local sandstone. After stepping through the stout old wooden doors, we entered a small atrium done in dark wood and very well cared for. Stepping through the next set of doors, though, was simply amazing. I thought this building was beautiful pulling up to it, but the exterior pales when compared to what's inside. I was in awe. The main room itself, massive, with its vaulted ceilings so high they seem to touch the sky. The stained glass windows are exquisite, not to mention massive. I think they were at least 2 stories high. There was a photo shoot for a wedding going on when we walked in, so we didn't look around too much so they could have privacy. There were a few parishioners in the pews, but not many. My daughter really wanted to touch the holy water, but being as we're not Catholic and don't know any of the rules pertaining to holy water, I told her no. Can you tell us more about the holy water? Please leave some info in the comments if you can. Number 6, Lagoon. Lagoon is a subject I can easily spend way too much time on. This is Utah's version of Six Flags. In fact, it was rumored for years when I was younger that Six Flags was trying to buy the park. I can honestly say I'm happy that hasn't happened, as it's still family owned and operated today. There is so much history I could go over with Lagoon. There's even a book about it, and yes, I nerded out and got one. I'll be brief though, because I want you to know what you're going to get to experience versus how it got to where it is. Now, it was founded in 1886 and originally called Lake Park. It was on the shores of the Great Salt Lake. 13 years later, the park was relocated to the east in a town called Farmington and built around a 9-acre lake and renamed Lagoon. This is when the rides really started getting added to the park. In 1906, they added a carousel with 45 hand-carved horses and various characters. In 1921, they added a wooden roller coaster that boasted 2,500 feet of track. Both of these rides are still in daily operation at the park. The roller coaster is one of the oldest wooden coasters in operation in the world. In 1983, saw the addition of the Fire Dragon Colossus. 1989, the old pools were torn out to make way for Laguna Beach. Now, I'll admit, when Laguna Beach opened, I loved Laguna Beach. It was one of my favorite places to go. But it could really use some sprucing up at this point, now that we're, 20 years later, 25. Today, you're going to find an amazing mix of old and new rides at Lagoon. They still have a lot of things that I loved as a kid in the 80s. There's a lot of them too, like Colossus, the Swings, Tidal Wave, Flying Aces, the Sky Ride. That's an amazing one. It's just mellow and takes you across the park. Tilt-A-Whirl, the Log Flume, the old steam train, and even bumper cars. But now, they also offer rides like Wicked, the Big Ferris Wheel, Samurai, the Bat, one of my favorites, Rattlesnake Rapids, and their biggest coaster to date, Cannibal. You can spend the day at Lagoon and still hit pretty much every ride you want to, some of them multiple times. It does get busy, but even with people coming from all over the state, not to mention southern Idaho, western Wyoming, and northeastern Nevada, it still manages to feel like a small park, but with all the big rides that large corporate parks offer. If you're in town from mid-September to the end of October, don't miss Frightmares. All the rides are open, and they have some haunted houses for you to visit as well as cast members wandering around in costume. It's amazing. Number 7, Temple Square. Temple Square is owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, more commonly known to most people as the Mormons. Temple Square takes up 5 city blocks with its historic sites and exhibits. At Temple Square, you can see the Salt Lake City Temple for the church. There's a visitor center with tour guides that can share all sorts of information about the area and history of the church. One of my favorite places on this tour was the Tabernacle. It was built in the 1860s for large gatherings. It's the home to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and boasts an organ with 11,623 pipes. What I found most interesting about this building, though, are the acoustics. You can speak from the pulpit and everyone can hear you without the assistance of a microphone. You can visit the Beehive House and see how some people lived in the last half of the 1800s. You can visit the Conference Center, the Christus statue, and many other places while you're here. Something very popular is the Family History Library and Family Discovery Experience. A lot of people are able to track their family history through many generations. Temple Square is a must if you're in town between Thanksgiving and Christmas. They do an amazing job of decorating the grounds. A lot of attention to detail goes into the Christmas celebrations. It's a great way to spend a date night with that special someone, or potential someone anyway. Number 8, Antelope Island. Antelope Island, now this is another one that I knew nothing about until I started doing research for this video. Growing up in Utah, I knew of Antelope Island, but knew nothing about it. I just assumed it was an island full of antelope. Well, guess what? There are antelope on the island, but you can also find bighorn sheep, mule deer, and a whole bunch of smaller animals you're less likely to see. Oh yeah, also the largest free-roaming herd of bison in the state of Utah. I wish this didn't have to be said, but please don't try and pet or ride the bison. It never ends well. Antelope Island has many miles of backcountry trails that you can hike, mountain bike, or even travel by horseback. There are sandy beaches where you can dip your feet in the water or take a swim in the saltwater lake. The park offers RV campsites and primitive campsites if you want to camp out for the night. Since I travel through this area several times a year, I think I'm going to add it to my to-do list of places to soon hit. Personally, I'm mostly interested in stepping back in time and taking a tour of the Fielding Gar Ranch. Built in 1848, it was the first permanent residence established on the island. Number 9, Liberty Park. Liberty Park is Salt Lake City's oldest park and second largest park at 110 acres. Wait, now I'm going to have to go look up what the largest park is because I don't know, and I always assumed it was Liberty Park because it's huge. Anyway, the land for the park was originally a grist mill owned by the Chase family. In fact, the mill is the oldest commercial building in Utah that is still standing. In 1860, the property was purchased by Brigham Young. 20 years later, upon his death, the park was purchased by the city for the community as a place for recreation. There's something for everyone to do at Liberty Park. You have almost anything you can think of to do here. Barbecue grills and tables for picnics, volleyball, bocce courts, tennis and basketball courts, paddle boats for the lake, a youth center, the Chase Home Museum, a playground, rollerblading, and even an aviary. Tracy Aviary is the largest freestanding aviary in the United States, also the oldest one as well. I remember going there as a kid and seeing all the different birds. It's a good thing I like birds. There's even a concessions area that has some rides, a Ferris wheel, carousel, and a train. Number 10, Park City. Park City didn't start out as a vacation destination, quite the contrary. It started like many small towns in the West as a mining town. It experienced quite the boom as well. There was a lot of silver to be had in those hills around Park City. The town went up so fast it was mainly wooden structures. In June of 1898, there was a fire that burned through Main Street, burning 200 businesses, homes, and dwellings. Park City today is a far cry from how it started. Now it is a paradise for anyone that loves the outdoors. Home to 2 world-class ski resorts, restaurants, museums, art galleries, shopping, luxury hotels, and so much more. Least of all, Park City is home to the Sundance Film Festival. Who knows, maybe you'll get to meet a celebrity while you're there. If you happen through in the summer instead of winter, there is still much to see and do. Horseback riding, fishing, mountain biking, scenic lift rides, golf, zip lines, and best of all, at least when I was a kid, the Alpine Slide. I even saw an ad for a place where you can go do yoga on a paddleboard in a crater filled with thermal mineral water. There you have it, folks. 10 amazing things you can see and do in and around Salt Lake City. Thanks for joining us.